Hi, it's Mike, and I'm calling my channel Neurodivergent to Potential Valedictorian. And why do I call it that? Well, because I've seen it happen. I've seen kids go from being labeled learning disabled and having a terrible time in school to becoming their peers' choice for valedictorian and giving the speech at commencement and giving the speech at the grad dinner. So, how did they do that? How did they become this person that their peers loved, that became a joy to be around and became this Uber, no plug there, person? It was through their self-development. They became that person that excels. They became that person that learned how to study and learned how to use their gifts to help them become super special. How did that happen? Kids that were diagnosed with a learning disability that changed schools because they weren't getting along with the kids at their other school and they were having troubles with their teachers, and yet they turn into this amazing person. And the reason is they learned how to use their gifts. Their parents and I and the school board and the people, the team of people at the school, the teachers, the administrators, the counselors, we worked hard to get that child and those children in our program to the point where they can do that. I have examples from when I went to school of guys that dropped out because school wasn't their thing. And yet they became millionaires. They learned on the job. They, worked for their families and blossomed. And kids that I've talked to, people that I've talked to who run businesses, they dropped out of school because they just didn't like school. It wasn't for them because no one taught them how to do school. No one showed them how school works and how to study and how to prepare for tests and how to be that person that gets along with everybody and succeeds on their own merits, with help, granted, right? And once they learn how they can learn best, when they blossom. So how do you do that? Well, how did we do it? How did we do it at our school? And how did we set these kids up for success? We created an environment in my learning resource room. I had a learning resource room. And so how it worked in our school is we had a designated learning support time. So they would have one class every 2 days with me, just like a regular class. And then they would be integrated in all the other classes. So they would come to me on day one. It was a 2-day rotation. And on day one, they would sit down and we had routines and we had systems in place to help them with their executive functioning, to help them with understanding how to do things. And the biggest block for these kids was whatever their disability was. It didn't matter what their disability was. We blanketed them with as much as we could. So we helped their executive functioning. We helped them with memory. We helped them with choice and learning how to use that choice to get the best results. So if a kid was really, really good at memorizing, like one child who did become valedictorian, she came to us and from another school, and she basically did not have a good time there, and her parents wanted to get her out of that school system and into a different one. And so they brought her to our school. And she was an actress, amazing actress. She could memorize lines like there's no tomorrow. and she was bubbly and friendly, but she couldn't do school. She didn't understand how to do school. We taught her the language of math. We taught her the language of school and helped her memorize the other things that she wasn't good at. So she memorized her math. She memorized her science and her socials and her geography. And that's how she did school, and that's how she did so well. We showed her how to use her gift to hack school. So, if your child is failing and your child is not doing their best and they're suffering anxiety and despair because they're not good at school, you need to figure out what they're good at. You need to figure out how you can help them become this special person. And it might take time, but it's doable. What are they good at? How can you use that gift to get them to that next level? To become that confident, independent learner that loves school, that loves being at school, and loves everything about what's going on. Not everything. I mean, no one's like that or they're crazy. But they love school. All right? So what can you do? In my learning support room is my only experience with this. And what we did is every time they came into us, they sat down, they came in, they greeted us. It was a community. We created a community where everybody was uber positive. There was no negatives. Nobody was allowed to use a negative put down. No one was allowed to use anything negative in my room. It was an expectation. And it was corrected as soon as it happened. That was number one. The 8 positives and hopefully no negatives. Number 2 was we followed the yes, please, and thank you rules. So manners were important. Language was important. They were not allowed to use language that was negative. They were not allowed to use self-put-downs. They were not allowed to use these things that perpetuate. I was going to say not learning, but it's not just that. It's just creating a bad body image and a bad mental image of themselves. We made it so that everybody had a chance to speak in that class, and they had to explain what their homework was. They had to explain what assignments they had to do. They had to tell us what they had to get done, and we would put it on our homework board and put out a visual for what it is. This is high school, of course, right? And so these kids are grade 8, grade 9, 12, 13, 14 years old, and to this point, their executive functioning was sketchy at best. So we showed them how to keep track of things, how to be more organized, which was huge, right? Most of our kids were scattered. I forced their parents. Forced is a strong word. I asked their parents to create an environment at school where the kid didn't have to worry about having pens, pencils, paper. I created cubbies for the kids where they kept all their school supplies. If they ran out of school supplies, they were there. Calculator, an extra calculator, an extra protractor, an extra ruler. We had all that stuff set up. So to take away that anxiety of not having the right stuff at school when they needed it, I instituted a 1-binder rule. So when they came to me, they had 8 subjects. Well, 7 plus me, right? So English, math, history, science, socials, whatever, band, choral, whatever it was, they had 8 subjects total. And I said, okay. Some kids said, well, there's 2 days, I need 2 binders. I said, no, I want to see every single subject every single day. So if you have 2 binders, then you have to bring both binders to this class so I could see what you're doing. And every day, myself and my assistant would go around. My learning EA was the best person on the face of the earth. She still is, and we're still good friends. And we would go around and we'd check in with each child after they told us what the homework was, and we'd look at what they've done. We'd see the papers that they hadn't completed. We'd see the homework they hadn't done and say, well, what about this? How come you didn't do this? Let's get this done first. And we would keep them accountable. We would make sure that their homework was done. There was no empty pages. There was no loose pages. There was none of this disorganized affair. None of that was allowed in our learning support room. Our resource room was the organizational capital for their lives and their school lives. Let's just keep it that way. And we would make sure they were organized and they understood what was required of them and what was needed for them to get done. We didn't let things slide. We were very, very proactive about helping them with everything. Not just their homework, but their assignments. What do you have to do? Let's look at it. Let's look at how we're going to do this. And we would teach them how to organize their writing, how to organize their assignments. I mean, some kids, when you had to write an essay, forget about it. Their essay writing was terrible. They didn't know where to start. So we showed them. We had to give them a blueprint. We showed them how to organize their thoughts and how to see the big picture. Because once they saw the big picture and they understood what it is that they had to get done and how they were going to do it, it became easier. It wasn't easy, but it became easier. We showed them how to do research and how to implement those things into an assignment. This is grade 8 and grade 9. I mean, these kids, to this point, have never really done this. They've slid under the radar, a lot of them. A lot of these kids, their diagnosis hasn't been from grade 1. It's been grade 6, grade 7. Grade 8, some of them are diagnosed with a learning disability. And those are the kids that we call fell through the cracks because they were sociable, they were friendly, they were nice, they got along, and they worked their hardest, and their parents would help them with their homework. And when they got to me, they still couldn't do math. They still couldn't write a sentence. Forget about spelling, some of them, right? And so we teach them. This is how you do math. This is the language of math. This is how you memorize spelling words, because English makes no sense when it comes to spelling. There's too many exceptions to all the rules. So we would teach them this, and they would understand, and they would learn how to be better learners. So, as a parent, you need to focus on what is your kid good at? What can you help them with helping themselves? How can you organize them at home? How can you create an environment where they can spend 15 to 20 minutes working on their math? They can spend 15 to 20 minutes working on their English. They can spend 15 to 20 minutes working on an assignment. There's your hour. That's 1 hour. 1 hour a day can change their lives. Our routine in the classroom was, again, they would come and we'd take up the homework board, and then we would ask them, what's the most important thing you have to do today? What is it that's due next? Not next class, but next. What is it that you have to get done that's the most important thing? And we would let them pick. And if they couldn't pick, we would go through their stuff with them and say, okay, well, you've got these 3 things to do. Which one is the most important? And we would teach them how to prioritize. And then we would help them work on that thing, or if they were independent enough to work on it by themselves, we would let them work on it and move to the next child and help them with that issue or that thing. And you would learn who were the kids that needed the most help. And those are the ones that you worked with. One-on-one, 15 to 20 minutes of that class. And you help them get organized. You help them put together their assignments, do their homework, teach them. And a lot of the times, new concepts were killers. And in the resource room, we would actually do redos, which means we would take the material and we would reteach it, because they just needed to work on it. And we would practice as groups of 4 or 5 grade 8 math kids. We would sit there and do, Pythagoras or whatever it was they were learning. And we would go through examples, and we'd have them all do the examples on whiteboards. Big, big whiteboards with big markers, and they could do it to their best ability. And then we'd all talk about it. Say, okay, yeah, you did this great. You forgot this one thing. Awesome. Awesome. Keep it up. Great work. We built their confidence to a point where they didn't need us anymore. By the time they left, I graduated kids out of learning support because they didn't need us. They were getting straight A's in grade 9, when in grade 8 they were getting C's, C pluses. And it was because they learned how to learn. They learned how to study. They learned they learned how to study. They learned how the system works and how to best navigate that system. And with their parents, they learned that they could be their best resource. And their parents could help them just like we helped them. So, as a parent, you can help your child become that special person. You can make sure that their life at school is not terrible and they don't want to go there. You can make it so that they love going to school. They love having a math test because they know they're going to do well, because they've already done that math test 5 times. And they know how to do it. They know how to answer the questions. And if they mess up, it's not I messed up. It's, I can't believe I did that. It's so silly of me. And then we say, no. It wasn't silly of you. You made a mistake. Mistakes happen. You learn from your mistakes. Okay? No negative self-talk. Okay, I hope this has been informative. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Please hit a like. Leave a comment if you want to know how we organize our homework board. And maybe you could do that at home. Have your own homework board at home. I mean, it helps so much with executive functioning. How can you help them with their homework at home? With writing an essay? Well, I hate to tell you, but you may have to learn the writing process. And I can go through the writing process with you if that's what you want to learn. And you can help your child with that writing process. How to find ideas, how to organize your ideas in a way that makes sense and answers the question that someone has posed. And do it from their lens and from their perspective, not from ChatGPT. And let's face it, AI is the way of the future, and the kids, when they ask a question online, are going to get an answer. It may not be right, but it's going to be an answer. And they're going to have to understand how to navigate AI and how to make sure that that answer that AI gave them is something that is actually true and can be used. And teachers aren't stupid. They're going to know when it's an AI-generated response. And I hope that teachers out there can understand that you've got to call these kids on their AI-generated stuff and maybe ask them questions about it. Because AI is the future. AI is going to take over the educational process. And we must all learn how to navigate this world where every answer is a click away. For special ed kids, it's not a click away. There's going to be the inability to understand what's needed and what's wanted by a teacher. And that's the hardest part. So, if you want more like this, if this is interesting to you in any way, shape, or form, please like and subscribe and leave me a comment. Thank you very much.